It's pretty hard to go wrong with these, and they use all of my favorite ingredients. I really love them. They're one of my favorite recipes. If you love chocolate, I've got you covered. This dessert is so delicious that when you find out it's secretly healthy, you're gonna be like, what the fudge? Let's get to it. Today we're making almond butter brownies. They're super easy to make, they're much healthier than regular brownies, and they're just as delicious. The entire recipe takes about 5 minutes of prep work, and then you just throw them in the oven and you wait. So I'm gonna put a cup of almond butter in here, and this almond butter is a little bit softened. I softened it by just melting it. It's just easier to stir later if you soften it first. Almond butter is great for baking, especially recipes that you don't want a peanut butter aftertaste. Pretty much any recipe that has peanut butter, you can substitute almond butter, and it will give you a more neutral flavor. So if you're making brownies, if you want the brownie taste to come out as opposed to peanut butter brownies, I'd recommend trying almond butter. I have this on a food scale. I don't have to worry about wasting any measuring cups or trying to get extra almond butter out of the measuring cups. I just put this right on the food scale and measure out a cup of almond butter, which is 240 grams. Now we're gonna get a half a cup of oats here, and I'm gonna put them in the food processor. What I really like to do is use rolled oats instead of flour and process those in the food processor. I really like oat flour because it gives a sweetness to recipes. A subtle sweetness, but it's there. And you're not using any refined flours, it's whole grain. You get healthy fiber from the oats. So these are basically healthy snack bars masquerading as brownies. And if you don't have a food processor, you can buy oat flour already done. You can also use regular flour, pretty much any kind of flour. Almond flour also works, but I'm gonna use oats and turn them into flour here. When I started the blog, I didn't expect to have an audience. I didn't think about making money. And for the first few years, I didn't make any money from it, and I was fine, I was happy. And I started thinking, hey, maybe I could do what I love for a living. No one had been doing it at that time, but I thought, it doesn't seem to be going away, it only seems to be getting more and more popular. But at the same time, I was in college, so I didn't really have time to try and figure out this full-time blogging thing and also do college classes. I thought initially that I was either gonna be a lawyer or a Spanish teacher. And I was staying up nights with WordPress for Dummies, teaching myself how to code. And I wasn't sleeping very much. And I was tired during the day. I was taking these classes that had nothing to do with what I was really passionate about. And I kept thinking, if I don't stop and see if this could really be something now, I might look back with regret and think, what if? What if I'd taken time to follow my dreams? All right, now I'm gonna take my oat flour and I'm going to pour it in with the softened almond butter here. So let's do that. Now I'm going to get some maple syrup here. I'm gonna pour in half a cup plus 3 tablespoons. And you don't have to use maple syrup if you'd rather use your favorite liquid sweetener. I am partial to maple syrup, so that's what I'm using here. And I'm using pure maple syrup, so not pancake syrup. So we're just gonna do a little bit of salt here, just 1/8 of a teaspoon, 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. So here's my half, and another half, and the third half. And then the most important part, the cocoa powder. I like to use a little bit of Dutch cocoa powder in my recipes, but also use mostly unsweetened cocoa powder because the unsweetened cocoa powder will have more antioxidants. And if you use all Dutch cocoa powder, it might be a little too dense and heavy tasting and a little bit metallic. So you just want that little balance. If you're looking for Dutch cocoa powder, many regular grocery stores will have it. You just look in the ingredients, it'll say cocoa processed with alkali. And if it doesn't say that, if it just says cocoa is the ingredient, then it's natural unsweetened cocoa powder. I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of this Dutch cocoa powder. So I know that's 10 grams. Then I am going to use 1/4 cup of regular cocoa powder. You don't have to use Dutch cocoa powder. If you just wanna use all regular cocoa powder, that's fine. So now I'm gonna just do 1/4 cup, and I'm going to whip this all up now, just with my spoon here, and I'm gonna stir it really well because you don't want pockets of baking soda in a bite. You know, you don't wanna go and take a bite and be like, oh, this tastes like baking soda. And because it doesn't have any gluten, you don't have to worry about over-processing it when you're stirring it. So let's just stir this up, and it's gonna start to look like brownie batter. College would always be there, and I could always go back if the blogging thing didn't work out. But I felt like I really wanted to take the time and really try and see if I could make it something. And so I told my mom that I was quitting college to work on a blog. You can probably guess how that went. My mom was definitely skeptical, But she's a very supportive person, and she knows that when I'm passionate about something and I put my mind to it, I'm going to do it. When I make a decision, I'm going to go through with it. And so she didn't stand in my way. She definitely helped me out, even if she was nervous, because that's how moms are supposed to be. It did turn out really well. It was a great decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I'm so happy I get to do what I love for a living. I did eventually go back and finish college online, which was a lot easier to balance. I don't regret for a second making the decision that I did. So there's no oil in these brownies, just almond butter. And that adds protein and healthy fats instead of just oil, which doesn't really add any nutritional value at all. So they're great for people who are vegan. They're also great for people who aren't vegan. I serve them at parties all the time. This is what it should look like. It's pretty thick. It's not like super thick, but it's a little bit thicker than normal brownie batter. So now I'm gonna take this brownie batter and I'm going to transfer it to a pan. So I have this pan here and it's lined with parchment paper. Now I'm gonna just transfer this brownie batter here into the parchment lined pan. And as I said, it's a little bit thicker than normal brownie batter, but that's what you want. That's the consistency you're going for. Because it's thicker than regular brownie batter, I'm going to take a second sheet of parchment, and then you can just use your hands to smooth it down like this. And you just want to get it to every corner. Now I've gotten this to the edges, so I'm going to take this second layer of parchment off. And it's a very thin layer, you'll notice, like too thin for brownies, and you're going to be like, that's it? That's the thin layer of brownies? But trust me, when it gets in the oven, it's gonna rise and you're gonna be like, whoa, what happened to the thin layer? But first, let's get some chocolate chips on here. With the almond butter brownies, I also really like to press some chocolate chips into the top at the end, right before they go into the oven. This is mostly for presentation, although it also gives me an excuse to eat some more chocolate chips as I'm baking. You can never have too much chocolate, so let's just throw a few of these on top. And I'm gonna press it down a little bit, and now they're ready to go. So now it's time to pop them in the oven for 15 minutes. The hardest part is waiting. When my parents come to visit, I'll put them to work right away. They're taste testers, or they'll hold a recipe so that I can have a hand in a photo, or they chop vegetables, they'll clean the food processor as I'm making another recipe. And my sister, she's also very supportive. Sometimes if I need extra taste testers for a particular recipe, I'll just text her really quickly and say, hey, do you have any parties coming up? Because she's a social butterfly and she always will. And I'll ask her if she wants to make a certain recipe, and she usually does because she loves to bake, she loves to cook, and then she'll give me the feedback on what her friends thought. My family's always been really supportive of the blog. They were supportive from the beginning, even when it wasn't making a lot of money, even when we didn't know if it was going to be anything. They've always believed in me, and knowing that I have their support is something that I can't even explain how important that is to me. You can see how the brownies rose up. They are no longer just a tiny thin little line. They're actually big, thick, fudgy, chocolatey brownies. These are delicious and healthy. They don't have any oil. They don't have any butter. They don't have any eggs. They're great for people who have special diets or people who don't have special diets. So the great thing is that everybody can enjoy these brownies. If you want to make them even fudgier, you can undercook them, which I like to do sometimes. With my almond butter brownies, and actually all of my brownie recipes, I like to underbake them a little bit. So you take them out before they're set. And people will take them out of the oven and be like, these still look raw, they still look gooey. Why is she having us take them out now? If you want, go ahead and bake them until they look drier, that's fine. But my trick is to take them out when they're still underbaked, because then you let them cool and you put them in the refrigerator overnight. And the next day, they will have firmed up because the water's evaporated and some of the moisture's evaporated. So they'll be nice and fudgy without being dry. But you do have to wait until the next day, which is hard. But there's also another added benefit of waiting till the next day, is that most baked goods, especially brownies, will taste a lot sweeter the next day. I sent the recipe to my mom to try them out, and she's made them 4 times since I sent her the recipe. I only asked her to make them once, but they're one of her new favorite brownie recipes. My mom's not a vegan or a vegetarian, and she went crazy for them. These brownies just use basic ingredients. You might even have all of them in your pantry, or you can keep all of them in your pantry for a rainy day if there's a day when you just want to make brownies. These look so delicious. I just have to try one.